1993, outside a South London pub, a chain of events took place that would change Leroy Smith and James Seymour's lives forever.
So, Leroy shot James, then a Metropolitan Police Officer, in the back that day, and following a chase to New York and back, he'd then go on to serve the best part of 2 decades in prison for his crime.
What's perhaps even more remarkable about this story is that both men are here today and working together to help young people out of gang culture and violence. Good morning, Leroy. Good morning, James. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start off with you, Leroy. Let's go back to the 80s and 90s, and I just want to kind of create a picture of who you was at that time. What sort of person was you? What was the time like? Can you just tell me a little bit about that time back in the 80s and 90s?
Basically, my mum got murdered when I was 2. So I started off on a bad trajectory from young. I grew up with my grandparents, and South London, the things I gleaned from it was all the negative things, and I just leaned towards the negative things because those were the people that had the stuff like the cars and the jewellery and the stuff what was shiny to my eyes. Yeah. So this just continued and spiralled and escalated, and then I just gradually became more and more entrenched in it and more violent and turned into like a horrible person, basically, because you can start doing simple little things, but it will gradually take away all of your moral compass and everything else, and you just turn into someone totally different. By the time 5 years has passed, you can go from being just a normal person into a complete criminal.
And I bet when you look back and see that person, it's a completely different person to who you are now.
Now, when I look back at it, it's surreal. And, it's hard to explain. When you're going through the process, you're not really realising that you're doing something wrong because you just think you're doing what's normal, but it's not normal compared to what the rest of the world is actually doing and what you should be doing to make your life normal and good for the future. And that little bit of time can spoil the rest of your life, full stop, period, and then you ain't going to have no future at all.
Leroy, what do you remember from that night in particular?
The actual night, I sent somebody to go and collect some money from a pub, from a friend. They didn't collect the money, they gave them more drugs instead of the money, and I was upset, so I decided to go there myself and collect the money. And then upon going to the pub on the back of the motorbike, we were seen by James and his colleague, and I've gone into the pub. They know that it's a drugs pub, so they've got intentions that they're going to search us to see if we've got drugs. And I did have drugs and a firearm, and I had escaped from prison, so I was wanted in a serious way, and I was looking at a very long time. So when I came out and was approached by James and his colleague, I was like, fight or flight. And everything just happened in a split of a second, literally.
James, what do you remember? And what was policing like in Brixton at that time in the early 90s?
Yeah, it was hard. It was very hard, very... There's still real deep feelings from the 80s, from the riots from there. There's, a lot of feelings from that. Yeah, it was tough, quite confrontational sometimes. But...
And do you have any memories of that evening yourself?
Yeah, it's just another late turn, and as Leroy said, we saw him go into the pub for literally a couple of minutes. Both him and the rider of the bike didn't take the crash helmets off, so that's a little bit unusual. We found the bike and did a computer check on it, and it hasn't been registered, so we've got more than enough evidence to stop and search them, which we intended to do. And when we started off, it was just like any normal stop and search, and then got to a point where it's almost like you cross a line that you've gone too far. The atmosphere just changed. Can't tell you what it is, but it just completely changed.
You just know instinctively, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. And I went to search the rider, who dropped something on the floor, which I think was crack cocaine. And I went to push him against the wall so I could collect the evidence, and that's when, in my peripheral vision, I saw Leroy struggling with my colleague, and my colleague nearly had the better of Leroy. They were both on the ground, on the pavement, and then I saw Leroy pull a handgun out, managed to free a hand, pull a handgun out, hit my colleague in the leg. Obviously, the gun fired, broke my colleague's thigh bone. Leroy told me to disappear, and it's almost like slow motion now.
Yeah. This
isn't really happening. And I literally turned, you know, what do? You've got an injured colleague. I've got nothing I can do to protect myself. Absolutely helpless.
Yeah.
It's a real horrible experience. And as I turned around, Leroy fired another shot, which hit me about a centimetre from my spine, went across the top of my kidney and ripped out the side.
Oh, my God. How long was you in hospital for?
I was only in for 4 days, but I went back for every day for another month.
Guys, we could talk to you literally until 12:30 to come off air, but Leroy, in terms of you eventually get tracked down in New York and you come back here, you serve almost 2 decades. What was the moment and how did your life turn around? Prison wasn't easy for you, rightly, but what was the moment where you turned your life around?
To be honest, prison, the high security prison where I was, is an extremely violent place, and it's not some place where you're gonna have time to even think about trying to change your life, right, because it's so violent and extreme. But when I was released, I was fortunate enough to be around somebody, a partner who was amazing, and she took the time out to show me another way of looking at things and financially supported me and then helped me when I said I wanted to write a book, because that's what I said to myself. I can use that as a vehicle to give back and to educate other people so they don't have to fall down the same trap. So then she helped me to manage life day to day while I wrote the book. It took me 1 year to write, and basically I got to take all credit off to her. She knows who she is, and she basically played 90% of the role of me being able to turn my life around.
So how did you guys become reconciled and do what you're doing now, which is try and help kids out of this situation?
And basically, I had a victim support officer who was really good, and she told me about the book that Leroy had written. So I read it, and some of it I didn't agree with, some of it I didn't like, but in it, I just thought if Leroy really is genuine, then what better moral support to have than one of his victims? And so I emailed the publisher, and that's how our journey started.
It's an unbelievable story, it really is. And what's unbelievable is the fact that something so negative has happened, something so awful, and then you've changed it into a complete positive. Tell us what you're doing, Leroy, together.
So basically, James contacted my IT person, and I got the email. At first, I was nervous and a bit afraid and anxious, but we agreed to meet, and we met in the train station, and we had conversation. I apologised, and from there we built up a friendship, and it's led on for us to be able to do talks like on LBC radio, worked with some gang kids in LA, in California, TV, BBC interview, and all of this is building up momentum and helping to push the word out, because it's a story of redemption what is really second to none. Yeah. And then James wrote his part of what happened, and then we joined it together, so it's the full, complete story from the beginning to the end. Yeah.
And James, your forgiveness is unbelievable. Did you do it for Leroy or did you do it for yourself?
Both of us. The reason I did it is I looked at it first, and Leroy served 80% of his sentence, which is a lot. You know, most people look at 50, 60%. So I looked at that. The other thing was Leroy could have easily killed us both. He had more than enough time and the means to do it, but he didn't. he shot us to stop us, and that's what he achieved. And I sort of looked at it and thought, well, you know, I can understand he could have just fired a shot in the air, but he didn't, and hindsight is brilliant, and I'm sure all of us would change parts of our life looking back on it. And I just thought that after 20-odd years, why have all that bitterness and anger? It's not doing you any good. I never hated Leroy because it wasn't personal, but I just looked at all the positives out of it rather than the negatives.
Well, look at what you two are doing now, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean,
It's just incredible.
That's the story of redemption right there, isn't it?
When I was younger, I used to hate police, but it's just because I was conditioned in my environment to think that way around, and now I don't have no issue with police whatsoever. I don't get stopped or harassed or anything, considering all of what I did. So that goes to show that it was just a mindset, and that's all it is. And basically, if you concern yourself with your own life and make positive of your own life, the chances of you having negative experiences with police are going to go down to nearly zero if you're living your life in a productive manner. That's just the truth.
Thanks so much for joining us and telling us the story. It's quite inspiring, isn't it?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Competition time now. Here's Sean Welby with all the details.
There's an